Afternoon. I'm Patrick O'Riordan, the Director of the Department of Building Inspection. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank you all who are here today to ask questions, share your perspective, and to offer your advice on how we can improve. Hearing from you is a critical part of our improvement efforts, and I feel blessed to have all of you as partners. Now, we have an agenda packed with updates. You will hear updates from our partners at the Office of Small Business about our Prop H projects and the resources that are available to help small businesses. We're happy that the Department of Environment and BERIN are here to talk about their contractor rebates. Then you'll hear from Joe Duffy about DBI support for small businesses and our Permit Services Division, and from our Permit Services Division for an update on pre-plan check, the Accessible Business Entrance Program, and this year's changes to the San Francisco building codes. And really, these public advisory forums are a great opportunity for us to hear from you. So tell us what's working and what we can improve on and how we can better serve you and the greater city. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick Hannon, who will facilitate today's program. Patrick, you're on mute.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Hannon. I'm the Communications Director for the Department of Building Inspection and somebody who has trouble with the mute button. I'm here today. Chris Vergara is manning the slides, and we really appreciate that you're here with us. We'll take questions after every presentation. Just raise your hand in the chat and hit *3, or you can call 1-415-655-0001, and the access code is 2488-494-3173. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Reynolds of the Office of Small Business for a presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle. I think there are some slides for us. Michelle Reynolds, and I am the Programs and Communications Manager at the Office of Small Business, which is, here we are, which is a division of the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. You can click on to the next slide. The Office of Small Business is San Francisco's central point of information for small businesses. We have 2 locations where folks can come and get assistance. The first is at City Hall, where we're available, case managers are available to help referrals to specialized advisors if there are small businesses that need legal assistance, financial assistance, or other kinds of expertise. We can provide some referrals, as well as for business registration, understanding tax obligations with the city, and things of that nature. And then also a location here at 49 South Van Ness at the Permit Center, which I'll get into in a moment. Next slide. So today I just wanted to provide a very brief update on Prop H, on our accessibility grant program, and some other resources for small businesses with storefronts. The first is the next slide, Prop H. And Prop H, as most of you probably know, was passed in November 2021 as part of the Small Business Recovery Act, and it aims to streamline the review and processing of permits for new small businesses to be within 30 days. Things are moving forward with that, and there's a small change in the management of that program, which had been previously managed by the Planning Department and is now being housed within the Office of Small Business, led by our 2 small business permit specialists. So that's amazing staff who will be able to guide small businesses through the Prop H process for a streamlined review of their permits. And that's an online form that you fill out to become part of the Prop H streamline review, and the website is here on this slide. And the next, I just wanted to, while we're talking about our amazing Permit Center staff, provide a reminder that the Office of Small Business does have staff available Monday through Friday at stations 77 and 79 at the Permit Center. And our staff is available to help kind of interpret information around permitting for small businesses, both DBI and planning and health and all of the many agencies that provide permitting for small businesses, serve as advocates for you and your project, watch out for recurring issues and advocate for streamlining and simplifying of processes, and just generally provide information and be a point of contact. The next slide, the next information I wanted to highlight is an accessibility grant program that the Office of Small Business runs. This is a now expanded program that is a reimbursable grant of up to $10,000. And these are for ground floor businesses with places of public accommodation. And these are reimbursable grants for one or both of the following. They could be for the purchase of accessible furniture, fixtures, or equipment, things like new ADA compliant doors, ramp equipment, countertops, accessible sinks, etc., things like that, as well as reimbursement for CASP inspections and reports. It's important to know that these grants do not cover the cost of labor. This is for prevailing wage concerns, but there are tax credits and reductions that businesses can use to support the labor costs in addition to the equipment fixtures and furniture costs. And the application is online, and in order to apply, because it's for reimbursement, you will need to be able to upload a copy of any paid invoice. And the next slide is just a reminder also. I know that there's going to be accessible business entrance program information later on in today's meeting, but OSB staff, we are available to help answer questions, connect people with CASP inspectors, legal support, and other opportunities and challenges that may come as you bring the accessible aspects of your business into fruition to be able to help not only comply with the law, but make your business more accessible to a broader set of customers and clients. And finally, the last thing I wanted to just highlight here is a grant program for small businesses with storefronts that is run by our colleagues over at the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and that is the SF Shines grant program. There are two ways to get access to those grant funds. One is for design services, for example, graphic design for a new logo, design and plans for new signage or awning for your business. And there's a grant program as well for construction. And that construction grant actually can be funding to support labor. It does have to be in line with prevailing wages. So be very mindful about how you can get the most bang for your buck with those grant programs. And I wanted to make a note about that construction grant that it's called SF Shines. It refers to storefronts, but it can be used for things beyond the literal facade of your storefront. So sometimes that can be a bit unintuitive. So it can include funds to improve the literal facade or signage, but it goes beyond that into the full space of a storefront business. And the next slide, I believe, has our contact information, our email address, sfosb@sfgov.org. We're online at sf.gov/OSB, and we are at the Permit Center. So with that, I will take questions, and thank you so much for inviting me to this meeting today.
Chris, do we have any questions in the queue?
All right, I'm looking through the attendee list. I do not see any hands raised. If anyone in the callers would like to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll unmute your call.
Okay. Well, if anyone has a question at the end of the forum, you're welcome to ask at that time. For now, we're going to move on to Becca Rabin and the Department of the Environment. to speak a little bit about some her colleagues at Bayren and some contractor rebates. Go ahead, Becca.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Hi all, my name is Becca Rabin and I work for the City of San Francisco Department of the Environment. We collaborate with the 8 other Bay Area county governments on an energy efficiency and electrification rebate program called Bayren Home Plus that benefits contractors and homeowners across the Bay Area. Today, I'd like to introduce Joseph Kaprusky from Bayren Contractor Services, who will tell you about how you can take advantage of this great local government offering. And we'll have time for questions at the end of his presentation. So Joseph, I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you for that, Becca. Yeah, like Becca mentioned, my name is Joe Kaprosky. I work for Clear Result. We administer energy efficiency programs throughout the nation, as well as Canada. My particular role is the contractor services field manager for the Bayren Home Plus program. So work directly with contractors, helping them enroll into the program, and as well as navigate the multitude of other efficiency programs that we have in the Bay Area. So today we're going to be providing an overview of Bayren Home Plus, discussing the benefits of becoming a participating contractor, and then of course how you as a contractor can participate and take advantage of these incentives for your customers. So Chris, we could go ahead and move on to the next slide. I will mention I also have Brian McLaughlin here with us. He's in our contractor services team, field specialist. He works with our contractors directly. He's also out there in the field doing contractor trainings, as well as conducting QC inspections on projects that are installed through the program. So he's also here to help field any sort of questions that may come in the chat. So yeah, so who is Bayren? Bayren stands for the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. And like Becca mentioned, it's a collaboration of not just San Francisco, but the other 8 Bay Area counties, which you can see on the map here. It's funded by ratepayer dollars, overseen by the California Public Utilities Commission. So what that means is if a customer lives in one of these 9 Bay Area counties and they receive a PG&E bill, they are paying into the program, therefore eligible for the incentives. Bayren Home Plus is single family, 1 to 4 units, with the occasional exception for complexes with slightly over 4 units. If it meets all installation and eligibility requirements, we can allow for some exceptions, but generally 1 to 4 units. Bayren does offer other energy efficiency programs as well. Today we're talking about the Home Plus program, but there's also green labeling, which would include the Home Energy Score program. So if you're a contractor that also carries that certification, we can get you linked up with that program and accessing those rebates as well. And Bayren also has a multifamily program as well for larger complexes for 100 units or less. So again, connecting with Bayren, becoming a Bayren participating contractor will sort of open access to these additional programs, and we kind of help link you to the appropriate personnel and people with those programs as well. So if we move on to the next slide, we can animate through here. So benefits of becoming a contractor, very high level, offer up to $5,000 in cash rebates for your customers. And it really is with little additional effort. Bayren has a variety of rebates from insulation, air sealing, duct replacement, mechanical upgrades. And there's also a variety of electrification measures. So as San Francisco and California in general transition away from fossil fuel, the rebates and resources are being heavily allocated towards those electrification measures. So encouraging customers to transition from fossil fuel gas appliances to more efficient heat pump options. If once enrolled, you'll receive ongoing support and guidance from our contractor services team. And again, we help you navigate the Bayren Home Plus rebates, as well as any other additional rebates that might be available in your area for your customers. Although we administer the Home Plus program, we are knowledgeable of other programs that we can help our contractors sort of sort of work through as well. So we also offer technical trainings, events, workshops throughout the year that you'll be invited to. So that could be, that could be tailored training for your sales team, coming out helping the sales team get up to speed with program rebates, understanding how to frame them into your proposals. And we also have technical workshops if you're a contractor that's looking to expand into heat pump technologies. It's something that you haven't done yet. We have those resources to connect you with as well. So if we move to the next slide, we'll just talk through some of the additional benefits. So yes, access to regional, state, and federal incentive programs that could be layered with Bay Rent Home Plus rebates. So in San Francisco, we have Clean Power SF as our CCA, which if customers enrolled with that program, customers enrolled with that CCA are eligible for some additional rebates. Additional incentives through Home Plus are applied for through Home Plus on a single application. So if the project is eligible for multiple rebates, we keep the paperwork simple, one application, and then we forward it to the appropriate entities to pay out the additional incentives. And there's no cost to participate. In fact, as part of the enrollment process, you might be eligible for a contractor enrollment bonus of $500. So that's designed to help compensate for some of the cost and time spent with our onboarding trainings, as well as the paperwork that's being filled out. We understand that admin resources are very valuable, and any additional lift is a lot to ask. So if we move on to the next slide. With rebates, rebate programs, paperwork is often a concern of contractors, and the idea of submitting paperwork is, can be scary. With Home Plus, it's a lot less scary. I'll say that. The reason being is most of our rebates require what's called a combustion safety test to be conducted at the completion of the project. So that entails a contractor partnering with a certified rater in their area to conduct that test out. And it ends up being basically a seamless handoff from the contractor to the rater. Once the project is completed, they'll connect with the rater. The rater then goes out, does the combustion safety test, and also will submit the paperwork on behalf of the contractor. So the contractors sort of, don't have to deal with too much paperwork. There will be some coordination between them and the rater, but we help make that connection through the contractor enrollment process, connecting with a rater that they're comfortable with. And many of our C20 HVAC contractors are very used to having third-party test outs through Title 24 requirements. So many C20 contractors, B general contractors that enroll with Home Plus find themselves already partnered with a qualified rater that has the BPI certification required for our Bay Rent rebates. So sometimes the partnership is already in place. So check with us, and we'll confirm all of that. And sort of furthermore, in additional benefit to participating, something that we're excited about is we're offering BPI certification classes for our contractors this year. We have a class coming up in December. So any and all Bay Rent participating contractors are invited to a 1-week training and certification course where they will be gaining that BPI certification themselves. That will allow them to conduct their own test outs, which would not require them to partner with a third-party company. So something we're very excited about. So great. If we go on to the next slide, we'll just kind of give a snapshot of an example of some of the rebates that are available through our program. This does highlight 2022 rebates, which will be consistent with 2023. We're not anticipating any major shifts in these amounts. So this is just a sample project to show exactly, how the rebates can stack on top of each other. So this is a sort of a typical electrification project where, a heat pump water heater was installed, a heat pump HVAC system was installed, ducts were replaced, smart thermostat was installed. And this just shows the rebates that would be applicable for this project. And sort of towards the end there, you can see the Clean Power SF Regional Midstream Incentive. So that's a direct to contractor incentive of $1,000 for any and all heat pump, water heater, fuel sub projects for Clean Power SF customers. And that rebate does go directly to the contractor with the expectation that the contractor is passing it on to the homeowner in the form of an instant discount. So, you know, if the project costs $5,000, they're able to charge $4,000, and then the $1,000 rebate would go to the contractor. And the rest of the BayREN rebates are either payable to the contractor or the customer. You can set it up so that the contractor is being paid in full upfront by the customer, and then the customer is receiving the rebates 4 to 6 weeks after the project completes. Or some contractors prefer to do it the other way, where they can offer this as an instant discount to the customer and sort of use it as a closing tool to move the project forward. And then the contractor is collecting the rebate after the project completes. So if we move on to the next slide, I think we'll just highlight another scenario here that shows, you know, how the rebates can stack. And then this is a situation where the customer is encouraged to combine mechanical upgrades with shell tightening measures, which would be insulation. So you can see that there's additional bonuses when customers are combining thermal work with mechanical upgrades. So there's a $500 bonus when doing so. And there's also a bonus for combining attic and wall insulation as well. So if the contractors insulating the attic and the walls as part of the same project, the customer would qualify for an additional $500 incentive, just to encourage them to do as much as possible while we're on site. So we can move to the next slide here. So this just highlights our basic requirements for becoming a participating contractor. We ask that you have an active current B general or C specialty license specific to the measure that you'll be installing. So for our program, that would require either a C36 plumbing license, a C20 HVAC license, or a B general specialty license, or C2 insulation. Currently, C10 electricians, we don't have any standalone measures that can be permitted and installed by a C10 alone. But we do have other ways for C10 electricians to partner with our contractor base. So if you're a C10 electrician and you're interested in participating, reach out. You know, there's other ways to participate. And that's where offering at least one measure in the program comes into play. And then serving, of course, at least one of the 9 Bay Area counties. We want you working in the area that our program is offered. And we can continue here. Yeah, and then I think there was one more little bullet point. Yeah, so maintain minimum insurance coverage per the contractor participation agreement. So there'll be some paperwork that's filled out during the initial onboarding. Contractor participation agreement, a W-9 if the contractor is going to be receiving any incentive payments. And then there's a COVID-19 safety acknowledgement form, and then we have our insurance certificates. So we take a look to make sure that the policy is covering the program minimum at general liability, automotive, and workers' comp. Yeah, next steps. I think there's a couple more bullet points on here that are a little.
Oh,
yeah, I think.
sorry.
The animation on it must be off. Yeah. Yeah. So next steps: register your company on the BayREN training portal. I'm not sure if there's a chat that we could drop the link into, Chris, but we have that link available. But certainly that's our email address. So if you reach out, you'll get myself, Brian, Tony, one of our team members, who could then walk you through the process of becoming a participating contractor. So if you follow the link that we'll drop in the chat and then register, we'll reach out to you. And then we'll get you connected with all the paperwork that's required and the trainings that you need to complete. Or you can just go ahead and reach out to us, that email address there, let us know you're an interested contractor, and we'll talk you through the process and answer any questions that you have. So I believe that's our last slide, so we could park here and go ahead and answer any questions that may have come into the chat.
Great. Thank you, Joseph. Just a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand in the chat and hit *3, or you can dial 1-415-655-0001, access code 2488494 3173. Chris, are there any questions in the chat?
I am scrolling through the attendee list right now. I do not see any hands raised as of yet. I'm almost at the bottom of the list, and I have no questions on the queue.
We'll move on to our next item. Next, we have Joe Duffy, our Deputy Director of Inspection Services, presenting on what's going on in inspection services. Take it away, Joe.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. Joe Duffy, Deputy Director of Inspection Services here at DBI. I'd like to speak briefly today about our new Small Business Inspections Ambassador Program. Basically, it's a new program that we have set up for when a building permit is issued and you're about to start the work and you're progressing through your project on any small business tenant improvement, small restaurant, small retail business, or even large projects. Basically, again, it's just after the building permit is issued. We have created a small business inspections checklist. And basically that checklist lays out all of the required inspections that are typically required for any small project for tenant improvement. And we also have included some electrical and plumbing permit and inspection information. And we also we have assigned a couple of building inspectors as small business inspection ambassadors. And basically, those ambassadors are going to coordinate with other inspectors. And when they're contacted by someone from a small business, the email address is on their DBI bizambassadors@sfgov.org. Our inspectors will respond within 48 hours to the customer. We want to hear what the problem is. We will help you troubleshoot that issue. It could be a code issue. You could be dealing with some problem scheduling an inspection. It could be a special inspection item. But basically, those ambassadors are there to work with you and our staff to try to resolve the issue. We understand as projects progress, and there's an opening date, for example, for a small restaurant or business, and you've got staffing issues, and you want to get that business operating. There is a little bit of a stressful time there regarding trying to schedule all of the inspections that are required from the DBI and other city agencies. We can help with that as well if there's any problems. So again, the other main thing on this is when a building permit is issued for this type of work, I would encourage people to schedule a start of work with your building inspector, have them go out there, go through the plans with you. The building inspector can take some time to explain the various inspections that are going to be needed so that we don't run into scenarios that we, for example, work covered and stuff. So again, we are here to help with that. The slide has got the information on how to contact us, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Sounds like a really useful service. Chris, do we have any questions in the chat?
Let me double check. Nope, no questions.
All right. Moving on to permit services, we're going to start off with Willie Yao, who's going to speak a little bit about end of year permit applications. Take it away, Willie. Perhaps Willie got waylaid. In the meanwhile, we'll take David Jones from Permit Services also is going to speak about pre-plan check. Go ahead, David.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Jones. I'm a member of the pre-plan check team. And the pre-plan check review process is a relatively new process. It was started in the beginning part of July. And it's intended to be a seamless process, and it's intended to work behind the scenes. And what we're trying to do is we've got really four primary objectives of the process. The first one is to confirm up front whether or not the plans are suitable and all the application materials are indeed suitable for review. Many times in the past, we've accepted the drawings. We haven't done that this level review. And after the backlog, the applicants are notified that, hey, these plans aren't suitable for review. So we're trying to flush that out at the beginning of the application process. Right now, we've got approximately 350 plan check reviews have been performed since the inception of the program at the beginning of July. About 70% of the material of the applications that we get have been deemed suitable for review, and the review process has been started. The second objective of the process is to identify the scope of the project in terms of a plan review. I know obviously you write the scope, the applicants write the scope of the project on the application, but David Peng, the other reviewer associated with this process, he and I, what we try to do is we try to put the scope in terms that plan reviewers look at. And what I think that, along with trying to estimate the number of review hours that we think a particular project is going to take, I think those are really two valuable tasks that we provide, because I think what it does is it enables us, as we're scheduling our workload, we can have an idea about how to assign plan reviewers a sufficient amount of work, so that we're not either underutilizing a plan reviewer or we're not overbearing another plan reviewer. And then the other thing, I think, getting back to identifying the scope of the work, so when the plan reviewer opens up the drawings, he has a little bit of an idea of what he's looked at. And many times, obviously, when these plans are brand new to the plan reviewer, to the applicant, to the architect, they've been working on them for months, so they have an inherent understanding of it. As a plan reviewer, you're opening up the drawings and you're starting out cold, and it takes you a little while to try to figure out what the real scope of the project is. So I think that's a service, trying to identify the overall scope in general terms of the project, as well as estimating the number of review hours that it takes. And the fourth thing is trying to just confirm that the application of the stated construction valuation is consistent. I think in the past, what's happened is we've gone through the process, and for one reason or another, the stated valuation on the application is way out of sync, and we've come up with a revised estimate. And then again, that's done in the past, that was done at the end of the review process. And I think what we're trying to do now, I think it's better that we flesh out this type of issue at the beginning of the process. So, like I said, it's a relatively new process, and we're real excited about it. And I think it's really going to help the efficiency of our plan review services. And I think it's going to enable us to give a better review service.
Terrific. Thank you, David. And now we're going to hear from Janie Chan speak about the Accessible Business Entrance Program. Take it away, Janie.
Hi, my name is Janie Chan, Manager of Technical Services at the Department of Building Inspections, and I'll provide a brief update on the Accessible Business Entrance Program and updates on the code adoption cycle. So many of you have heard of the Accessible Business Entrance Program already, but for those who haven't, it's a program that's based on the ordinance, an ordinance that had passed in 2016, and it helps building owners comply with existing state and federal accessibility laws, and it helps people with disabilities so they can access products and services offered by San Francisco businesses. And it ensures that businesses, their entrances and paths of travel are accessible to people with disabilities. You go to the next slide. And so in order to comply with the program, properties would have to fill out one of three forms. There is an exemption form for owners to certify that their building should be exempt from the program, and there are 4 exemptions listed in the ordinance, and it's also listed on the exemption form, which is on our very useful website. And there's a second form, it's the waiver form for owners who believe that their building already complies with the program requirements. And there are 3 conditions under which a waiver may be considered. And that's also listed in the waiver form. And lastly, there's a category checklist compliance form. So if the exemption form or the waiver form does not apply to the building, property owners are to engage a licensed architect or engineer or a certified access specialist to complete this form, the category checklist compliance form, and it will categorize the building into 4 categories, and it will help determine how the entrance should be renovated. Go to the next slide, please. So for those who will need to renovate the property or the entrances, building permit will be required, and as you know, there will be end of the year surge in number of permits coming in. So I do encourage applicants to get that in sooner rather than later. There could be a rush before the year's in, especially when there's a code cycle change year. So as you can see, the deadline to start your permit is December 31st, but we encourage you to submit your applications well before December 31st. Next slide, please. We have sent out 7 mailers this year between January and August. You should have received these in the mail. And this is how the mailers look like. If you go to the next slide, please. And the next one. So there are a total of 23,000 properties in the program, and at least 2/3 of the properties are in compliance. Around 7,000 of these addresses still need to comply with the program. And so if you're one of the 7,000, we encourage you to quickly get on our website, which if you go to the previous slide, please. It is very, very user-friendly and useful. The forms are online, and there's a step-by-step guide to get you to submitting the form online, where you don't need somebody to help you submit the form or fill out the form. But if you do need help with any of the forms, or if you have questions, you may contact us. And if you go to the next slide, please. There's our contact information, dbi.abe@sfgov.org, or you can call us and we can help you through the process to get you in compliance. And so the next thing I'd like to talk about is code changes coming January 1st, 2023. San Francisco building code amendments take into effect. There are no substantial changes to the California codes, except for the fact that electronic signatures are now accepted. You should be happy to hear that. The rest of the changes are just administrative code changes that to align with the state codes. And with the housing code, there are no significant changes to the housing code as well. That concludes our updates to the code changes.
Great. Thanks, Janie and David. Now I'll take open questions. Just as a reminder, you can raise your hand in the chat and hit *3, or you can call in at 415-655-0001, and the access code is 2488-494-3173. Chris, do we have any people in the queue wanting to ask a question?
Yes, we do have a couple of people. The first caller has a question. Is David Penn. I'm going to be unmuting his call right now. Go ahead, David, you're live.
Hello, thank you. Thank you all so much. It's great to hear from you as always. My questions really are regarding David Jones's presentation of the new pre-check process. And they are, the first question is, you mentioned, using the kind of written description or type description from the applicant on the building permit application and kind of using that and translating that into speak that, DBI plan check, is more relevant to the DBI plan check team, which totally makes sense. My question is just, is that just an internal sort of interpretation, or are you actually modifying the permit description that would be the actual permit description on the application form and or that would show up in the permit tracking system? That's my first question. My second question is, this is really a process question, and in the event that your team determines that an application that you have reviewed is not complete, does that just automatically mean that a response gets sent to the applicant that with the deficiencies in the application, and those deficiencies are then required to be remedied before the application proceeds into the plan check queue? And that is my understanding, but if that is correct, kind of how quickly upon receiving the responses from the applicant do you feel like your team is able to get that back into, or formally into the queue for plan review? And David, I'm sure you probably understand, but the intent of my question is just wondering how much more time this new process is taking in terms of back and forth and communication before an application can actually formally get in the plan review queue. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for those questions. No, with regards to your question about the application description, it's for internal use only. We're just trying to, again, further elaborate on the scope of the work. I'm putting it in terms of plan check. I'm looking at it is if I were a plan checker, what additional information that's not presented on the plans that is of interest to me, and that's the type of information that I'm trying to relay to the plan reviewer. No, it's certainly not my intent or objective to change the scope of the application. In further elaborating on that, we're not, David and I, David Peng, the other plan reviewer, we're not doing an in-depth plan review. That's not the goal of this process. So we're not looking to change anything. It's for our comments are strictly internal only. The second comment, it's a real good question about the deficiencies. What we do is we receive the plans primarily in electronic. In the electronic world, we get an email. The EPR staff has created, the IPR staff has created a Bluebeam project that we then look at the drawings and look at all the application materials. We respond to that email, and then if we note any deficiencies, if we identify any deficiencies in the response email back to the IPR staff, we describe those deficiencies. We've also instructed the IPR staff not to send it back to us for re-review. We're obviously again, this whole process is to try to facilitate and increase the effectiveness of the submittal and the review process. So we think that it's typically not necessary for the revised materials to come back to David and myself. So no, we're noting our deficiencies. You're responding, as I understand, as the applicant, and then the application is being processed.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, David, that does. That's really helpful. Thank you. So it sounds like, so you identify any deficiencies to the IPR staff, they then communicate those deficiencies to the applicant. And then once the applicant responds, it is the IPR staff that kind of checks that off. Okay, the geotech report was missing, that's now been provided, and then they pass it into the queue. It doesn't go back through you.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, David. Chris, can we have the next caller?
So we have Serena Calhoun. I'm unmuting your line. You are now live, Serena. Feel free to ask your question.
See you, Carrie.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm a local architect, so we're doing a lot of ABE entrances between now and the end of the year. So Janie, I guess my comments and questions are for you. I've been emailing Tom Fessler and Neville about this, and Neville and I have kind of spoken about it briefly, but I haven't gotten a response. We're doing about 35 of these permits between now and December, and the DBI process of only being allowed to bring one permit in at a time is going to be extremely time consuming. Most of these are very turnkey. It's a lot of power door operators and, sloping a little section of the concrete under the door. And I'm wondering, and what we've asked is whether or not we could schedule like a bundled plan check review for maybe 8 permits, on a 3-week alternating cycle to go through these, where somebody from building and somebody from DPW could be there to try to sort of streamline. So that's one of my kind of questions. Secondly, I noticed that you said permits had to be approved by December 31st, but that's not consistent with what's on the DA form, the DA 17 form, and it's not consistent with what's in the legislation, which states that you need to have filed your permit by the end of December and then have it approved by September of next year, which I think is much more reasonable given the DPW constraints specifically. So I just wanted to confirm that. And I haven't been able to see anywhere that there's a date for actual completion of construction on these projects. So that would be really helpful to know as well. And then the third thing is a lot of my clients are getting violations for entrances that they believe they've filed their paperwork for, their checklists for, and there is no public facing database. So is there some way that we can see a public facing database that shows exactly the list of addresses, what's been filed, when it was received, so that we can, kind of try to preempt this on behalf of our clients a little bit more when there's a confusion or paperwork's gone missing? Thank you so much.
Serena, thank you for your questions. The first one you were speaking of was requesting to have perhaps a batch permitting review for several permits at a time. Are you talking about over and you said something about submitting projects one at a time, and you're talking about over-the-counter projects, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's something that we can discuss internally to see if that would be a possibility. If you can leave your phone number or email us, we can get in touch with you.
Great. And you're the better contact than Tom Fessler now, is that right?
You can contact both of us, any of us.
Okay, great.
We connect all the time, so. And in terms of your second question, you're right. The December 31st, 2022 date is the date that applications should be submitted. It's not the date for which permits are to be issued. I apologize if that's something that I said, but I believe I said that the permits need to be submitted.
Your slide did show permits approved December 31st and work completed September 29th. So thank you for clarifying. Is there a deadline for completion of the work? I just haven't been able to find it anywhere.
Yeah, it should be in the ordinance itself, and I can check to see if it shows up in the AB 110 or in DA 17, information sheet DA 17. Let's see here. So let's see here. So date for filing can be found in information sheet DA 17 as well. I'll have to find that information and get back to you. That's
Great.
okay.
Thank you.
So your third question was about violations and list of addresses. I don't believe we're sharing that database with the public as of yet. That's not a policy that we have right now. We'll have to discuss that one as well and get back to you.
That'd be great because just like a permit application gets filed, like we have sent in all of these via email, and most of the time we get a response that says, thanks, we got this, we'll get back to you. But then our clients are continuing to get violation notices. And so there's a lot of lack of transparency around understanding what has been filed. And just like being able to see like what permit has been filed, it would be great to just see a list of we've received it for these addresses.
If your client has submitted forms, they should have received a response email confirmation that a form was received. Otherwise, if there are any addresses that are in question, feel free to email us and we'll look it up in our database and help you out.
Great. Thanks, Serena and Janie. Chris, is there another caller?
Yes. Next we have Howard Wong. I'm going to be unmuting your line. You are live now, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Very interesting presentations. I'm an architect. I had 8 decades of applying for permits as a in private firms, and as well as for the Bureau of Architecture and TPW for many decades. And we all know the challenges of DBI and just the huge volume of permits that come before it. And every few years we have attempts to streamline the process. I don't know how much it's improved, but I assume it has improved a lot. It sounds like the pre-plan checking is another means of having things done upfront. It will facilitate matters. One of the things I've learned over the decades is that in smaller jurisdictions where permits are fewer, when one goes to the counter, they immediately open the plans. They start looking at it with you and spend a little time, and you get a lot of questions answered. And sometimes it almost moves you into the permit approval process rather than just pre-plan checking. In other large agencies with fewer permit applications like the airport, who have their own plan checking, they do the same thing. They take that, you go there, they open the drawings, very well-rounded, knowledgeable person is looking at the drawings with you, pointing things out, and you're already from your first meeting into the permitting approval process. And they may have some comments and you might take it away, or they said, well, I think this is ready for me to take it to the next step. And their permits are granted pretty quickly because they have very few applications. They're probably bigger projects. They're used to doing it with a few people. Other agencies, I think, that use more of a team approach is something DBI should look at. If you were to take certain projects that are particularly attuned to having a team approach, you could have a group of 5 or 6 different groups: fire, electrical, ADA, general architectural planning, code compliance. Hit that project all at once and move it into 50-60% approval stage. So I think there are a lot of things that permitting can do to streamline. And of course, it's a question of having some really multidisciplinary type of expertise. And maybe that should be a focus of of the department to get people who can really look at a project from many disciplinary sides without having it move from one station to another and having it sit in inboxes for weeks or months. So those are probably more suggestions and questions, but somewhere in there may be a question about some of the things that you're doing to, help the client, help your applicants. Thank you.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you very much, Mr. Wong. Really appreciate it. Chris, is there anybody else in the queue with a question or comment?
There was a Bert M who had his hand raised, but he may have put down his hand. But I'm just gonna unmute him to make sure that I didn't miss him. Bert, you are live. If you did have your question still, you're live and feel free to ask.
Sure. On the pre-plan check, is that for over-the-counter site permits or addendums for all three?
Yeah, Bert, David Jones here. It's intended for intake projects only. It's the pre-plan check process. Process is not for over-the-counter or Form 8s. It's only for intake projects, and it encompasses a site permit application, an addendum applications, and it works in both the electronic format as well as the paper format.
Okay, great, thanks.
It's a great question. Thank you, Bert. Chris, is there anybody else waiting in the queue to ask a question or make a comment?
Let me do one last scroll through the list.
While he's doing that, just as a reminder, if anyone has a question or comment, you can raise your hand in the chat and hit *3 or call in 415-655-0001, access code 2488-494-3173.
There's no new hands up, but I'll give it a minute.
This is Willie. I'm Willie Yao with the acting plan review manager. So there is some, I guess I did not unmute myself earlier, but it is a reminder for folks to bring in their permit applications if they want to catch the wave of the current code cycles, because all applications that comes in after that is accepted after December 31st, which for this year is December 30th, is the last business days of the year. It has to comply with the 2000, I think it's the 2022 building code, which was enacted in 2023. So it's very important that you folks prepare your plans accordingly early on and try to submit it hopefully before December 15th. So we would give the pre-plan review folks a chance to look at them, to be able to accept them. So to avoid the last minute rush in which that we may not be able to get to all of your permit applications. And as well, given the sheer numbers of accessible business entry that needs to get filed before December 31st, particularly is to plan ahead regarding that sort of situation. And I think that earlier applicant, I think earlier architect mentions that they have bunches of those that need to come in at a time. So I and Neville may actually, and also with our accessible business entries task force there, to come up with some kind of methods to take a bunch of them in the same time, so not to avoid the last minute crunch. So I think that is a very good question that posed up because of the sheer number of permit applications still out there that need to get filed before the deadline.
It's a great reminder. Thank you very much, Willie. Chris, do we have anybody else who has a question or a comment at the moment?
Nope, no new hands popped up.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. We'd also like to solicit any suggestions for future topics. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for January 25th, the next Public Advisory Forum meeting, tentatively scheduled January 25th. And if you have any suggested comments, feel free to raise your hand, or you can email me at dbi.communications@sfgov.org. That's DBI COMMUNICATIONS@sfgov.org. Chris, did anybody volunteer raise their hand to suggest a topic?
No, no new questions.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for attending. Really appreciate your interest and questions and comments. And we'll see you on January 25th if we don't see you beforehand at 49 South Van Ness. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to proceed to stop the recording.